October 2019 is when the transition of CEO role came into place. So I'm instilled as a CEO, and my only ask is that they commit to funding us for a year, because we were kind of drip funded quarter by quarter up to that point. Is this a real business? I understood, like, if I was in their seat, I would have looked at it and said, this is kind of crazy, right? So my ask for them was, I need a year of runway in order to build this business, and here's how I'm going to do it. And we talked through that. In February, 2 of the investors said they were going to pull out and no longer fund. And we were at the point where we wouldn't make payroll in a couple weeks. We had an emergency board meeting, bring them all on the line. The one investor who said they were out had been a longtime investor. And I just very plainly said to him, I said, listen, when I took this job in October, you promised me a year. And now it's 4 months in, and I understand it's not going 100% to plan, but here's all the positive momentum.
I have this core belief, and that is that success leaves clues. Every successful founder leaves behind a trail of decisions and hard-earned lessons that you can follow. And on this show, I am hunting for these clues and piecing together what makes great software companies work. This mission is what led me to Dean Curtis, the CEO of Ingage, a company with $8 million in revenue and about 35 employees. This is a story of a former Apple exec who risks it all to lead an agency serving Fortune 500 companies. In his first decision as CEO, he sells the agency, the only part of the business with revenue, and he pivots the whole company into software. I'm Johnny Page, and welcome to a new episode of Titans of SaaS. Have you ever believed in a product so much that you'd risk everything to build it? That kind of idea that doesn't just suggest possibility, but it demands action. Well, that conviction is what drove Dean Curtis to build Ingage. Today, at thousands of kitchen tables across America, Ingage takes that fuzzy picture in a homeowner's mind and brings it into focus, helping contractors show their customers what's possible before they ever swing a hammer. But this journey didn't start in home improvement. It began at Apple, one of the biggest companies in the world, at a time when they had just released their most iconic product to date, the iPhone. So the year's 2008, and the iPhone had just hit the market. Ingage, known at the time as Scroll Motion, had produced one of the first apps available in the App Store, but it had nothing to do with home improvement.
So the company's been around since 2008. We were actually the first app on the App Store back when the App Store was launched for interactive books. So if you bought a book back in 2008, 2009 on the App Store, it was likely our app. At one point back then, we were the number one app provider in the App Store. And then Apple released iBooks and we didn't have a business anymore. So then we built digital magazines for iPads, because it was 2010. And we did that for a couple of years. We had Esquire and O and like major magazines, but it turned out people didn't really want to buy magazines for an iPad. And also Apple came out with newsstands. So again, took the business away from us.
By 2010, after the iBooks pivot, Scroll Motion transformed into a high-end digital agency, creating custom interactive presentations for Fortune 500 companies. And that is where Dean enters our story as an Apple executive working in enterprise partnerships. You see, at the time, Apple's strategy was to support their partners who were building on the Apple operating system. So Dean and his team were heavily invested in the work that Scroll Motion was doing.
At that time, I was working at Apple in the enterprise business, and we were partnered with the company. My friend and I, Alan, we looked at what they were doing. We're like, why don't you build software so that anyone can do this, right? Because the experiences they were creating were amazing, right? They built the interactive app for the Super Bowl, right? They built the launch materials for the Chevy Volt, right? Interactive, swipeable, peel the first layer away, like really interactive, really cool stuff, but it didn't scale, right? 20 software engineers and 80 creative people designing stuff.
So by 2016, Josh Kopel, the founder of Scroll Motion, had spent 5 years transforming how enterprise sales teams told their stories, crafting these interactive digital experiences for industry giants like Johnson & Johnson, Verizon, GM, and Apple. And the appetite for these experiences grew so rapidly that clients began asking for Scroll Motion's technology itself rather than the one-off presentations they had been creating. So Josh decided to begin exploring this as an option and started by recruiting Alan over to be the VP of engineering.
My friend Alan, who was on my go-to-market team at Apple, we were building these partnerships. He was an application development focused guy. So he was out trying to help people on the nuts and bolts of building these great solutions, design reviews, best practices, all of that. They hired him on to be the VP of technology and the VP of engineering to really put all steam ahead on this app.
So Josh and Alan get to building this new software product. And what Dean didn't know was that he was only 6 months away from a life-changing decision. At the time, Dean was living the professional dream. He was working at Apple, one of the most innovative technology companies on the planet, traveling the world, partnering with global leaders, and shaping enterprise technology during the height of the tech revolution. But Scroll Motion was going to need someone to lead their go-to-market team.
6 months later, I get a call. We're on the phone just checking in. Hey, how are you doing? He's like, I think we're ready for go-to-market. Are you ready to leave Apple? I was living in Philadelphia at the time. I was working in Cupertino. I was traveling worldwide, 250,000 miles of airline miles a year. I don't know if this is going to work, but let's give it a shot. And in February of 2017, I left to go over and think about the go-to-market plan around this new platform.
For Dean, this decision went beyond career calculations. What he saw was a chance to create something, to see his idea go from concept to fruition.
I don't want to say I reached a limit at Apple, but I reached the limit of where I felt I had direct influence over something that I could really create. And I saw this as an opportunity to go and create something.
In February 2017, Dean made the leap, joining Josh and Alan at Scroll Motion. Together, they had a big vision for what the software could do, but the path ahead would take them somewhere completely unexpected. Let's take a moment to thank today's sponsor, SaaS Academy. Whether you are bootstrapped or venture-backed, growing a SaaS company is tough, but you don't have to do it alone. SaaS Academy helps founders unlock their company's full potential with expert coaching, proven playbooks, and a network of peers who have been in your shoes. From scaling your team to perfecting your pricing, SaaS Academy is going to give you the tools to win. So if you're ready to level up, check out saasacademy.com and find out how they can help you grow faster and smarter. As Scroll Motion pivoted towards building their new software platform, they found themselves in a familiar startup dilemma. On one hand, they had this established legacy business, which was a financial backbone of the entire operation. But on the other hand, they had a new opportunity, this resource-intensive software product with a promising but uncertain future.
We spent 2 years running parallel paths. So we had the legacy enterprise business. We had a handful of very good customers. So it was a good core to build off of, but it required so much work. The ideal customer back then was a pharmaceutical sales rep walking into a doctor's office and having 2 minutes to present. What's the interactive sales aid that we could present to them in order to get the doctor to really pay attention and start prescribing a medication? That's the kind of sales aids that we would build. Very high-end enterprise stuff, very polished, lots of regulatory concerns, tons of things like that. What we were building with the product in Ingage was an iPad app that a designer that could build their portfolio in. Completely different market. So for that first 2 years, we were tinkering with, like, could we be an iPad only solution and then eventually turn this enterprise business over to the new platform and scale that way? The answer was no.
After 2 years of struggling to execute the strategy of converting agency clients over to the software product, the CEO ends up stepping down. In the fall of 2019, the board appointed Dean as the new CEO, and he came out of the gates with a big swing.
First decision I made was to part ways with the enterprise business. We sold the people, the customers, and the revenue off, keeping us from where we thought we really could go, which is into more of a sales enablement platform. But if we wanted to go fast in this other direction, it was really holding us back. So selling that enterprise business helped us kickstart where we are today.
So Dean, I heard a story about this board meeting where you tried to convince the board to sell off the business that they had known and operated for almost a decade to go after one that was still really uncertain. Can you tell me about that meeting?
Yeah. So October 2019 is when the transition of CEO role came into place. So I'm instilled as a CEO in October of 2019. And my only ask is that they commit to funding us for a year, because we were kind of drip funded quarter by quarter up to that point. Is this a real business? I understood, like, if I was in their seat, I would have looked at it and said, this is kind of crazy, right? So my ask for them in October 2019 was, I need a year of runway in order to build this business, and here's how I'm going to do it. And we talked through that. In February, 2 of the investors said they were going to pull out and no longer fund. And we were at the point where we wouldn't make payroll in a couple weeks.
Eventually, Dean was able to convince his investors to continue funding the business, which proved to be a great decision because Ingage started to build traction.
We had a dozen customers in home improvement that we got. One came inbound through our website. They happened to be part of a peer group within the home improvement industry. So they were really happy with what we created for them. And they told 10 of their friends. And before we knew it, we had 11 customers on the platform. We literally got lucky because New Pro came inbound through our website, and they had 10, 11 really good friends who they could convince that this was the thing. And from there, we just took off.
What started as an idea mentioned to a partner at Apple years prior was finally coming to fruition. It wasn't just an idea with potential. This was a real business with real results. Ingage had found product market fit.
2021, we kind of turned the corner of like very consistent, growth every quarter, or at least being able to deliver a very consistent number and a predictable number each quarter of, hey, we believe we're going to hit this many customers and this much revenue. We just kept hitting those targets. And it was up and down, but we did a good job within 80 to 90% of predicting how much business we could generate, because we got really smart at how we were marketing, the shows we were going to, the networks we were trying to be a part of. And it was just comfortable knowing that we were, hitting those metrics. Churn wasn't too bad in the beginning, which was also really helpful. Those initial customers are still customers, all of them. We might have lost a couple because they went out of business, but all those initial customers are still customers, which is absolutely amazing. Usually by the time you're a 5-6-year-old SaaS company, those first customers are long gone because, the promise you're delivering is gone, has changed. They're still here. And it was really about building that network. And, we built a very good brand as well. I will say our marketing team has done a very good job. When we go to a conference, people know who we are. And the brand aesthetic, the brand promise has been strong from the beginning. I think that helped us as well to, see us through that 21 to 24 period of consistent single after single after single. We never had that meteoric boom and, oh my gosh, how are we going to sustain this? It was always, we were very, very consistent. They saw that we could deliver results on a really consistent path.
What makes Dean's story particularly unique isn't just the success of the company, but it's the way that they managed ambitious vision with disciplined execution.
I always look at the numbers. So my degree is in math, right? So people are always like, oh, where'd you get your MBA? I'm like, I didn't. I did my MBA through working in business, right? I have no business degree, but I have a degree in math. I was a math teacher to start my life. And I always just go to the numbers. And I have good models that I've built through rigor and testing, and we talk through. It's simple, but it's hard, right? Because you have this model that says we're going to do this number, and you're like, how? Right? What's the deal math to get us to that number? And can you commit to that, or is it a dream? And we would have really hard conversations on our leadership team of, are they dreams or are they reality? And we would only base our forecasting on reality. Were we perfect? Nope. But the models worked, and we weren't afraid to change the model too, right? I remember looking at models that said, we're going to be a $50 bazillion company in 4 years. I never believed them. And I don't know if that's a skill, a trait, or just my conservative nature, but I never believed past 1 year in the model. Yes, I could see it growing if these things continued, but I never believed it. So I always tried to plan, 3-4 quarters at max.
Today, Ingage is doing more than $8 million in annual recurring revenue with a team of 35. But like most entrepreneurs, Dean is always looking into the future. Dean, where is the business 3 years from now? I love that you're a goal setter. Tell me where's Ingage at 3 years from now?
I believe we'll be a $20 million at least company, which doesn't seem like a fast ramp, but to go from 8 to 20 is a big jump. The large number starts coming in. We'll be operating in 10 different markets. So we're in one market now. We have that home improvement This year, I want to get into 3 markets by the end of this year. I want to be in 10 markets or more by the end of 3 years. I don't want to say we're exited because I don't know what that is yet. I get that question a lot, like, oh, what's your perfect exit? I don't know yet. I think we still have a lot of technology stuff that we're really ripe on right now that we're rolling out that could take us in a lot of different places. Yeah, I have to step out of being the guy who's doing all the different jobs that I mentioned earlier, right? So I can't be HR, I can't be IT, I can't be sales, I can't be customer success. I need to be building the people who build the business. I cannot be operating this business in 3 years. I can't be operating this business by the end of 2025 and hit those goals. I need to be operating at a totally different level, thinking of how I'm helping my people rather than how I'm building a business. The word that comes to mind is trust, right? Having the trust that when we have a conversation with the marketing team and I say X, Y, and Z, or here's the things I think we should be considering. What's your thought on that? Trusting at the end of that conversation that it was heard and that I don't need to be involved to shepherd it, to project manage it, to push it down the pike. It's the trust to say, I invested in that person, that person's invested in their team, and whatever we discussed and agreed to is just going to get done. So I think the biggest hurdle is myself. I think the biggest hurdle is me thinking I can do everything.
As I reflect on Dean's journey building Ingage and the time that I got to spend with him, there are a few key lessons that stand out. Success leaves clues, and Dean's story is full of them. First, there's this power of singular focus. When Dean took over as the CEO, he made a bold decision to sell off the agency. And while others might have tried to run both companies, Dean recognized that dividing their attention would only hold him back from building a great SaaS business. Service businesses can be perfect incubators for SaaS companies. Dean's team understood their customers' workflows deeply because they'd done the work manually first. But there comes a time when the agency needs to make a decision to go all in on the SaaS product, and Dean knew exactly when to take that leap. The second thing that stood out to me is Dean's commitment to product development. You don't grow from a dozen customers in the home improvement space to an $8 million SaaS business by accident. You do it by building something that people love to use every single day.
The one thing we always invested in was the product. And that was actually a learning from Apple. If you look back during some of the economic downturns of when Apple's major innovations happened, they happened after economic downturns. And the reason was Apple was never the company that pulled back the reins on product development when things got tight. They actually doubled down and kept investing in it. And I felt that was a really solid idea, is to keep our engineering team as strong as we could, rather than making all these fancy things that people would never use. We've tried to make what we have more usable in every single iteration. It's kind of, the iPhone is a great example of something that is incredibly simple, but ridiculously complex if you look under the covers of all the different ways you can configure and set alert. It's nuts, the amount of hidden features that are in there. We have those too, but we try and make our software as simple, out of the box, easy to use so that people can get activated as fast as possible, right? And try to never lose that through complexity of the onboarding process.
Finally, there's Dean's approach to investing in his team. As a former Division I athlete, Dean is no stranger to hard work and leading by example. What sets him apart isn't his personal drive. Most CEOs are focused on growth, but it's his ability to instill that same commitment to growth throughout his entire organization.
I'm a big goal setter. I've talked to people and they don't set goals. I'm like, I don't know how you live. It just doesn't make sense to me to aim at nothing consistently. I don't know how you get out of bed in the morning and not have goals to hit. So we're really building an intentional practice within our company to give people a framework in order to identify where they want to be personally and professionally at the end of the year. Because I believe that if somebody's here in December of 2025, if they're the same person they are right now, we've failed as a company because A, they're not doing better work for us, and B, they're not progressing as a human being to be a better version of themselves, right? Whether that's their fitness or their ability to respond to emails, I don't know what the skill is that they want to build, but if we're not helping them identify that and give them coaching along that path, we're failing as a business. So to me, building the team members is part of the culture. It's part of the everyday. It's part of the one-on-ones. We just finished a whole thing at the end of 2024. I interviewed every person who's at the company. So we did a whole series of stay interviews because I asked them two very simple questions. What are 3 things you like about working here? And what's one thing you would change if you could? And I got this actually from Phil Jones at our boardroom event. And I thought it was beautiful to simplify it to those core questions. From those interviews, we came up with the top 10 things people love about working here, the top 10 things they would change. And we came up with 8 actions that we're putting in place in order to help the people grow and make changes in our company so that they're happier here.
All right, so you've got the power of singular focus, the commitment to product development, and Dean's focus on building a strong team. These are the elements of what built the foundation that took Ingage from a risky pivot to an $8 million business serving thousands of customers. The lesson here is that sometimes the difference between where you are and where you want to be is simply following the breadcrumbs left by those who've walked the path before. Thanks for listening to another episode of Titans of SaaS. This podcast was sponsored by SaaS Academy. It was produced by Nicole Beaulieu, Devin Homus, and Aiden Danzy. I'm your host, Johnny Page, and a special thank you to our guest, Dean Curtis, for sharing his story with us. Hey, if you enjoyed today's episode, can you do me a favor and make sure you subscribe and leave us a review? It really helps us reach more founders just like you, and honestly, I would consider it a personal favor to me. Hey, and if you are looking to grow your SaaS business, SaaS Academy is here to help. You can join thousands of founders who've scaled their companies using our proven systems and strategies. All you have to do is visit saasacademy.com to learn more. Until next time, keep building and stay curious.